One of the most important things about orchid set from seed is the symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizal fungi. There is no energy store in an orchid seed. What there is just a basic seed, and it has to be infected with the fungi for it to germinate. The fungi attacks the seed, which the fungi is living in the ground all the time, and there's a chemical release from the fungi that helps the seed germinate. It's like a food for the seed, and that's what germinates an orchid. They need that mycorrhizal fungi, and most gardens it's been sprayed out or they've used fungicides or pesticides and it kills the fungi. That's why there's only certain areas like sand dunes and nature reserves where it can grow freely because they don't use pesticides of any description, you know. As well as reproducing from seed, they will vegetatively bulk up. So that started as one single plant. Now this expands to 4, 5, 6 in a group, and it will keep spreading while the mycorrhizal fungi is still working on the roots. It's nice to see so many, especially at Cleethorpes. I mean, lots of people walk by and really don't know what they are. This is a bee orchid, Ophrys pifera, and it has got an amazing life cycle. It takes somewhere between 9 and 10 years to reach flowering point. The seed itself, when the seed's set, falls onto the ground. It grows underground for the first couple of years with no leaf at all, so in symbiotic relationship with the mycorrhizal fungi that's in the ground. And then bit by bit the plant gets larger and larger. By about year 5 there's a couple of leaves that show out of the ground, and then get to year 9 or year 10 and it flowers. Beautiful flower spike. This one's really pale, but there is some variation with it within them. It flowers once, sets seed, and the whole plant dies. So it's got a 10-year life cycle. Gone. Lots of people have tried growing them in gardens and things, but because there's been so many pesticides and fertilisers in domestic situations, they just won't grow. Really isn't worth even trying to grow them at home. But we're really lucky in North East Links at the moment because we've got some really good open verges that they can travel into. It really does matter. Even like central reservations down bypasses and things, it's really important. In European areas, bee orchids are pollinated by Adrena and Eucera bees, but here I don't think we normally have the right species. They're actually pollinated by bees, and the pollinia from the plant stick to the bee, and the bee flies from that plant to another plant and cross-pollinates. Here most of the plants self-pollinate, so the pollinia move down and fertilise their own flowers. The other thing about it is the actual flower itself gives out a mimic pheromone which attracts a bee. It's very unusual for a plant to be able to do it so exactly. I think with it being an estuary and having high tides and things like that, it's always been wet. That used to be the dune line, where this buckthorn is here, across here. That's the last dune line. And that salt marsh is evolving now, getting thicker and thicker, and there's another dune line further out towards Pilot Island there. We're losing land from the Yorkshire coast with erosion. Here we're actually gaining it. Gained some in the estuary, but we're gaining lots down at Gibraltar Point, just before you get down into the wash. The actual shoreline is extended massively. Over a couple of 100 years they must have gained, I don't know, maybe half a mile or something like that. Just unreal. Losing ground in Yorkshire because of the erosion, losing ground in Norfolk, but we're actually gaining ground here, especially down towards Gibraltar Point. I think we've gained something like half a mile coast depth, which is incredible. Whether it lasts or not, if we keep global warming under wraps, we could all be swimming. Yeah, some of the species that we've got here at Cleethorpes in the sand dunes, we've got northern marsh, we've got southern marsh, we've got a mixed swarm of hybrid marsh orchids, which is a mixture of common spotted and southern marsh, because they easily interbreed. And then of course we've got the marvellous bee orchid, which is quite stunning, small but absolutely stunning. Let's get into the meadow. These meadow areas are really nice. I did think at one bit when we got that tidal surge that we would have lost most of the orchids, because I thought it would have wiped out the mycorrhizal fungi within the ground, all the salt water, but apparently it can tolerate it and they're recovering splendidly, which was quite a surprise. Now this is pyramidal orchid. Its Latin name is Anacamptis pyramidis, also just known as pyramid orchid. The actual flower spike itself usually forms a cone shape when it's in full form, but if you look carefully on the petals of the actual flower, the lip of the flower itself, these are all triangular, and that's where it gets its name from. So three-pointed triangular pyramidal orchid, beautiful little thing. We haven't got so many of these, but they are cropping up here and there. The absolutely marvellous coloration.
They don't spread as easily, do they?
No, they don't seem to do as well. I think there's a problem with seed set. I'm sure there is, because some of the orchids are reliable on different types of beetle or fly or other types of insects. And I think where there's another big colony across at Barton on the roundabout there, and they must have either exactly the right soil samples with the mycorrhizal fungi in for it to set. But when they put the roundabout in, we went across and had a look, and there was thousands of pyramidal orchid. But the conditions must be just perfect in that position, that's all. But it's really nice to see. Variation there in the orchids, going from a lightish pink down to more maroony colour, burgundy. That's where the hybrid marsh orchid mix goes. Because they interbreed so easily, the sward itself over a very long period of time will become uniform throughout, and it'll just be one species and it'll be specific to this area. Unless it's had other influxes coming in, like the northern marsh being blown over the estuary, and you get the seed from that. What were southern marsh orchids and common spotted orchids will become blended, and it'll be specific to this area, so the coloration will balance out. Although there might be a little bit of variation over the years, it'll become uniform and you'll get a distinct colour that's just on the sand dunes. Come and have a look at these. They look a really good mixture. See, that one's got lines on it, which means it is a common spotted, but it's a hybrid. The coloration isn't quite right. In common spotted orchids, normally the coloration is vivid white, really bright pristine white, with loops and dots on the actual petals themselves. And next to it, another hybrid. See, the coloration's starting to turn a little bit, and there's a really dark one. As I say, they'll blend, so eventually over hundreds of years they will all become a base colour as they keep interbreeding. It's like a tribe, an isolated tribe. It's a nice dark one there. So this is proper southern marsh, this one, just with the dots and flecks. Now this one's interesting. This one is a common spotted orchid. Let's have a look, see if we can get it. Beautiful little thing. So that's common spotted orchid, Dactyloryza fuchsii. It also has spots on its basal leaves as well, and you can see the spots. It shows us a little bit. The actual leaf parts of the plant are a lot finer than southern marsh orchid. Southern marsh orchid leaves tend to be thicker.